Hi, we're
Hey,
back.
Krista, we're back. Telling you what, I think we may as well give the title. This is episode 8 of LRL. Here we are, left, right, and local, coming back at you. We had a week off there for Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
How was your Thanksgiving, by the way?
it was good. I'm glad it's over and now we move into Christmas.
Yeah, no, the train of holiday spirit just keeps on rolling on. What was the dinner? Was it traditional?
It was pretty traditional. Yeah,
Yo, ham or turkey?
ham,
Yeah,
turkey.
nice.
Yeah,
Did both. Yeah, we did both too.
stuffing, Brussels
Yeah,
sprouts.
nice.
Yeah, sweet potato souffle. I mean, it was pretty traditional.
Sounds very similar to what we did. Well, we're blessed, aren't we? To have
Yes,
been
we
able
are.
to do that. With that in mind, this is episode 8. It's called The Tipping Point, and I think everyone's going to find out why in a moment.
Right.
So why don't you go ahead and tell us what we're up against here?
So I have been in contact with David Pascoe over the last couple of weeks. David Pascoe is our First Circuit solicitor, and he is
Right.
also running for state attorney general. And he and I have been in contact with one another over the last several weeks regarding this civil suit that David Martin brought against the town, Mayor Fanning, Mayor-elect Kelly Ulmer, Sean Murphree. And, I contacted David. I spoke with him about the civil suit. He asked if I would send him a copy, which I did. And now we've got criminal referrals to SLED. And I sent over a FOIA request to David Pascoe's office yesterday morning. And today around lunchtime, I received the 3-page letter that was sent to SLED to put these folks up on criminal referral. Now,
And it's more than just the people who are named in David. There are lots of Davids and there's lots of
Yeah.
Seans in this story. But David Martin, the former police chief of Elloree, his civil suit, it's targeted at several individuals who feature prominently in the alleged corruption surrounding
Right.
Elloree and the police department. But going beyond that, in his suit, he also mentions the bad behavior, to put it mildly, and in fact, suggested criminal behavior. And those allegations are leveled against the likes of Jessica Darnell, Lauren Davis Smith, or Ren Smith as she goes
right.
by, and others. And so David Pascoe has come out and asked for a criminal investigation into many of those people, not only all of those named in Martin's suit, but also those named in who are adjacent to the
Right.
actual defendants in his suit. It's quite something, and it's indicative, it's suggestive of not just one or two outliers who may have been corrupt, but it's suggestive of an entire cover-up involving several members of the Elloree Police Department and Elloree Town Hall.
That's correct. That's correct. And if I could just take a few minutes, I would love to read this letter to our listeners. It really does sort of create the outline for what we're going to talk about this evening. So I will just go ahead and start. The letter is dated November 25th, 2025. It was sent to Chief Mark Keel at the State Law Enforcement Division on Broad River Road in Columbia. And here is the bulk of the letter. Chief Keel, I'm writing to formally request the assistance of the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division in an investigation into potential criminal offenses, involving the administration of the town of Elloree in Orangeburg County. I respectfully ask that your investigators review the actions of the following individuals: former Mayor Mike Fanning, who is our current mayor now, former Town Councilman James Ulmer, recently elected mayor, former Elloree Police Officer Michael Mann, former Elloree Police Chief Sean Murphree, former Town Clerk Jessica Darnell, former Municipal Judge Lauren Davis,
Lauren Davis Smith, Ren Smith. See her now if you want some ice cream.
any other town employee involved in criminal activity your investigation would uncover. Several citizens of the greater Elloree area have raised concerns regarding the town's administration. Many of these concerns are outlined outlined in a civil suit or civil complaint against the town and several members of its administration, including those listed above. The complaint is filed on behalf of David Martin, former Assistant Chief of Police and later promoted to Chief of Police of Elloree Police Department, and outlines several causes of action against the town. After reviewing a copy of the complaint, I believe the facts alleged may raise a prima facie case of violations of South Carolina law if true. While a civil complaint is not assumed to be factually accurate, the allegations raised by former police chief are sufficiently serious, and I believe they merit further investigation. The complaint alleges that David Martin, after recently being promoted to chief of police, began efforts to professionalize the town's police department, which included conducting audits of the department's evidence room and inventory, as well as the department's finances. As a result of these steps, Chief Martin allegedly discovered and uncovered the following. Point 1. A complete mismanagement of the department's evidence room. It was learned that multiple items of evidence were missing and believed to have possibly been stolen, giving rise to the violations of South Carolina Code 8-1-80, misconduct in office, common law misconduct in office, and violations of South Carolina Code 16-13-30, larceny, grand larceny. Sean Murphree is believed to have been involved, as well as other members of the department. Investigative assistance from your office would be of great help in determining the extent of violations and extent of those involved. Point 2. On several occasions, payments amounting in the thousands of dollars to a local body shop, which is affiliated with defendant towns, town council members, plural, were made for work to vehicles believed to have been police vehicles that were never actually performed. It is believed that James Ulmer, former town council and recently elected as mayor of Elloree, owns and operated or previously owned and operated a towing and auto shop believed to have been involved. Point 3. Allegations that Sean Murphree, while in his capacity as chief of police, used town funds for unauthorized personal purchases without consent or permission. It is alleged that other officers may have been doing the same. Point 4. Allegations that former police chief Sean Murphree historically refused to perform policing duties and services into what he and other town officials considered to be predominantly African American parts of the town. Point 5. Allegations that days before a scheduled SLED audit of Elloree Police Department evidence room, town clerk Jessica Darnell attempted to set the evidence room on fire. Point 6. Discovery of kickback payments authorized by town officials between the town and James Ulmer, then town council member, in which Ulmer operates a towing company and receives funds for towing vehicles impounded by Elloree Police Department. Ulmer is alleged to have made admissions that he evaluated the effectiveness of the police department in his role as councilman based upon the revenue that he, bold and underlined, made from law enforcement related tows. These matters were brought to the attention of Mike Fanning, the mayor of Elloree, who took no action. Fanning, along with Sean Murphree and James Ulmer, then appeared to conspire to terminate any investigation into the above listed matters and to attempt to prevent any audit by SLED. The arson attempt discussed above occurred shortly after these efforts to obfuscate an investigation. During a subsequent investigation into the suspected arson incident, Municipal Judge Lauren Davis refused to sign search warrants or subpoenas related to this investigation and pressured investigators to turn their investigation elsewhere, despite evidence clearly suggesting several of the above-mentioned individuals were involved. Judge Davis then summoned Chief Martin to court and ordered him to stop investigating Jessica Darnell, who was a suspect in the arson investigation at this time. Darnell and Ulmer were present when this demand was made. Based on this incident, it appears that Judge Davis disclosed confidential details of an ongoing police investigation to the very people being investigated, hindering and obstructing any further investigation. Later in June 2025, James Ulmer is alleged to have stolen a radio from a town vehicle while in his capacity as town council member, which is valued to be several $1,000s. Mike Fanning, who was aware of the larceny, retrieved the radio from Ulmer at a council meeting. The radio was linked to other radios used by Elloree PD, enabling Ulmer to listen in on confidential police communications regarding criminal matters. I wish to reiterate that the above allegations are in former Chief Martin's complaint and unverified. However, given the Chief Martin's former position, the potential seriousness of these matters, and the possible conflicts of interest within the local government, I believe that an independent investigation by SLED is necessary to ensure transparency and accountability and to prevent the erosion of public trust. Therefore, I am requesting SLED's assistance with this matter at this time. I have tasked a senior assistant solicitor with my office in preparing this information for your review. I will make him available to you and your investigators for assistance in your subsequent investigation into these allegations. Additionally, I am referring this matter to the Public Integrity Unit for consideration and have copied 16th Circuit Solicitor Duffy Stone with this letter. Finally, as my office was preparing this information to forward and disclose to SLED, more troubling allegations were brought to our attention. These additional allegations have been reduced to writing in affidavits and are enclosed with this letter. Thank you for your time and your continued commitment to upholding the integrity of law enforcement in South Carolina. I appreciate your attention to this matter and your office's dedication to ensuring justice and accountability. Sincerely, David Pascoe, First Circuit Solicitor, CC Solicitor Duffy Stone. Buying, selling, or just curious? Trust Dan Hassel for your property inspection needs. He's licensed, insured, and bonded. Give him a call today at 843-494-3387. Finding the truth beneath your roof.
Well, better late than never.
Right. Long overdue.
And long overdue is a phrase that has been passed back and forth between Murphree and myself.
Right.
First stated by me on WIS 10 when I was interviewed about his arrest and subsequent dismissal from Elloree.
Right.
As our police chief. His name just continually comes up amidst accusations.
Yes.
It's accusations of criminal behavior, accusations of corruptions.
Well, since we're talking about his name coming up over and over and over again, let's talk about another lawsuit that has just hit the public index.
This is a third lawsuit now, if we're counting.
That is correct. Yes.
The town of Elloree.
Yes.
This is brought by another member of the community,
a business owner
who is alleging harassment and specifically harassment by the town headed up by the mayor, and specifically naming Sean Murphree, the former police chief, again, as harassing a member of the community. Does it sound familiar, people? Are you starting to get the memo?
Listen,
I'm wondering, are you, those of you who live in this community who voted for Kelly Ulmer, are you starting to get a picture of what the fuck is going on here?
do you get it
I
yet?
hope so.
Or are you still asleep at the wheel?
No, I speak to all of those of you who think that you're in the know when you support these people. What you've been supporting is this ongoing, this pervasive and persistent cover up of things that we understand from firsthand experience and things that we don't understand yet because we either weren't here or they weren't perpetrated against us. But this is larger than just covering up the various crimes that have been committed against me and my family, for example. Much larger, because no one, even if not in their right mind, would go to the lengths that some of these folks have gone to preserve themselves, to try to prevent themselves from getting in trouble. I'll take you back to when Sean got fired. One of our community members and her husband walked into the town hall to find him shredding documents, Sean Murphree, with his girlfriend present. And of course, it goes hand in hand with what we've come to understand now. And David Martin has used whistleblower status to bring to light this accusation that the evidence room was essentially not only being grossly mishandled. So, I mean, at that level, you're talking about irresponsibility, but it's irresponsibility that goes beyond just dereliction of duty. That has potential effects across the nation because, for instance, a gun that is unlogged properly could have been used in another crime in another state or in another county, in another city. Could have been used in a murder, for example. The drugs, where do they go? What are you doing with them? Selling them? Why are you not either disposing of them, or if they're evidence, why are they not being properly logged? What about the money? Why is that not being entered into the system as it's supposed to be based upon each bill's serial number, no matter how small or how big the bill is? The weapon's the same. If their serial numbers are present and haven't been scratched off, then you owe the system, a national system, the entry of that firearm. And the list goes on. I think that we should go through and fully understand what's being alleged here and do it on a person by person basis. So let's start at the top with Mike Fanning. Mike Fanning is now being criminally investigated. That's what David Pascoe has called upon SLED to do, is to investigate several people, Mike Fanning being one of them, for these what might amount to criminal allegations from David Martin. So what is David Pascoe calling for as it relates to Mike Fanning, as you perceive it?
So, when a criminal referral is sent to SLED by our solicitor, that means that there is sufficient information to go ahead and instigate a criminal investigation. So
fully understood.
When we are looking at Mike Fanning, Elloree is a strong mayor town, and Mike has said it before. The buck stops with him. So,
but specifically, what we're looking at, the allegation where Mike Fanning is concerned in this case, is that he played a role. The allegation is that he played a willful role in resisting or preventing David Martin from initiating an investigation through SLED into employees in town hall or matters related to town hall. This relates to the evidence room specifically, correct?
So we have, with Mike Fanning, it would be misconduct in office, common law misconduct in office, and he is
anything relative to the kickback schemes that are alleged with specific town council members.
Yes. So Mike Fanning, he has hushed our police chief from instigating an investigation through SLED.
That's the allegation.
Correct.
So really, in a way, that if unfortunately for Mike, it touches a lot of these accusations to people who are adjacent to him, because when you willfully put the brakes on an investigation at the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, you're not only preventing that particular subject from being investigated, but you're also playing a role in preventing or obstructing an investigation that may well lead somewhere, branch off to somewhere else.
There's a level of protection between Mike Fanning, Sean Murphree, and Kelly Ulmer that is destroying our town.
Well,
It's
we've known that
destroying public trust. Yeah.
We've seen that happening. In fact, you and I, 3 years ago, I sat in Senator Stevens' office and played for him audio tapes and videotapes of Sean Murphree trying to break into my property, doing various other things that I don't need to repeat for the umpteenth time here. Anyway, I took Senator Stevens through all of those things, and he was very generous with his time, gave me the opportunity to do it. When I had finished, he was apologetic. He was embarrassed.
Right.
And he immediately contacted SLED while I was in his office. He introduced me to a SLED investigator over the phone. He told the investigator, gave him a synopsis of what we had gone through while I was there, and essentially introduced me and asked him to take the lead on investigating this. I sent that man over 100 pages of information and communications, and never heard a word. Called him numerous times, never heard a word. Nothing. Actually had appointments with Sean. What was his name?
Sean Murray.
Sean Murray, right? This is what I was saying earlier, is that there's a lot of Seans, there's a lot of Davids. So the point is that Sean Murray made an appointment. Now, I met Sean Murray when I had gone to witness Sean Murphy's hearing where that order of protection that J.D. Bonds had called for was actually granted against Sean. I was there present at that hearing. That's where I met the SLED investigator, Sean Murray. Murray gave me his card. We exchanged numbers. We spoke. We texted. I retain those text communications to this day. We actually had an appointment.
Right.
Just didn't show up. 10 minutes before the appointment, he canceled. That happened twice with two different SLED dudes. It's interesting where David Pascoe takes the time in his letter to honor SLED's service to the community, to the state, because my experience with SLED has been very much what a prominent attorney who I went to discuss my case, which ultimately settled, as you know, against the town and the police department and certain members therein. That attorney was unfortunately was not able to take my case, but in the process, we had the discussion of what I was doing, and I told him I'd gone to SLED. He goes, "Oh, don't waste your time with SLED." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Oh, SLED's not going to help you." I said, "Really? Why?" He went on to explain to me that although SLED is charged with policing the police, that they unfortunately have shown more often than not a willful agenda at protecting the police. And I have to say that has been my experience. I've had several meetings canceled by SLED. I've had several people at SLED who promised to follow up and never did. So I guess, Sean Murphree, if you're listening to this, you're probably cheering from your poorly positioned seats. I don't think that win is going to last forever, my man. Maybe they're finally going to come for you.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I hope so. You know, I have to say that I am very grateful that David Pascoe has had the discussions with me, the very candid discussions. I mean, we've spoken multiple times and texted back and forth multiple times over the course of the last month. Right out a month, because the civil suit first dropped the end of October. I'm grateful that he has taken the time to really review this and dive in. And he's also spoken with other witnesses and has received those signed affidavits. And all of that information has been sent. And I'm grateful that he did it, because you and I couldn't get anywhere with SLED.
Well, listen, I'm grateful that he did it too. Here's the context within which I would put it. And I know that you have a relationship of sorts with David. And by that, I mean, he's an acquaintance of yours who you're able to talk to. He's made himself somewhat accessible to you when he has a moment, and you to him. Here's what I would say about David Pascoe. David Pascoe presided over a malicious prosecution where I was concerned. And it didn't happen once, it happened twice. And one of those times at least would have required, and by law should have required, the meeting of and the decision-making of a grand jury. It would be literally impossible for a grand jury to come together in the case that happened against me, that these people who are all being looked at criminally by David Pascoe's request, which is very interesting. This is all a big incestuous mindfuck, because here you have the group of people who I allege were in a conspiracy to do anything they could, not only to subjugate me and my business, not only to harm me and my family and our business, but to try to get me into jeopardy. And this was led, as you know, by the ringleader in my story. The ringleader in my story is Sean Murphree, aided by many. David Martin is not hands clean in this, as far as I'm concerned, through my own prism. From my perspective, there's no possible way that David Martin remains hands clean. David Martin, to me, is Icarus. He's put this civil suit out into the ether. He's done it as a whistleblower. That's going to offer him some protections, but he is flying too close to the sun with his wax wings, and they are going to burn, because what David Martin did to me, only a person who had knowledge of what he was doing could have done it, meaning he was well aware that he was breaking the law, pursuing me the way that he had with no evidence, and signing a warrant without an investigation, and the list goes on. What I was accused of doing, just to be clear, not only did I not do, I didn't come close to doing. There was no crime. They literally made up a crime, and Lauren Davis Smith played a significant role in allowing that to happen. And in the aftermath, unquestionably broke the law. Criminal behavior out of a magistrate, criminal behavior out of several police officers. So I want to be very, very clear and say that this is a strange orgy of, from my perspective, folks who are culpable in participating in criminal acts. One of them is suing the others and has leveled some insane accusations. And the guy whose office, David Pascoe, facilitated not once, but twice, a case being instated, then reinstated against me with no evidence whatsoever, meaning no evidence provided by David Martin, no evidence provided by the accusing parties, no path of investigation could be introduced. Therefore, Pascoe's underling, in this case it was Phil Geis. Phil basically just flipped a switch based on David's words, based on Sean Murphy's words. Who was it that Sean has the relationship with and called? Was it David? Was it Phil? I don't know. I know that you have a relationship with him, but I don't. So I'm here to say the truth. And I know it from my experience. I experienced this firsthand. It's not me making up bullshit. It's me actually just conveying what happened. In order for the case against me to be reinstated, a case that was dismissed the first time because there was no evidence. The case was predicated on the idea that I had stolen somebody's furniture and sold it off and not paid them. But the furniture was in my store and in the storage next to my store, in Elloree, on the same street to which I initially brought it when the consignor gave it to me to sell. All David Martin had to do as the investigating officer was say to me, hey, this guy is accusing you of stealing his stuff. And I would say to him, dude, no problem. I'll either be there to unlock for you, or I'll have someone unlock my store and let you in, and you'll be able to bring the accusing party with you. You'll be able to see all of his stuff right then and there, and you'll see that there's been no crime. But David never did that. And the reason David didn't do that is because David didn't want to do that. David wanted me in jeopardy. So David was willing to go to Lauren Davis Smith, lie to her, get a warrant signed so that they could say that I was a fugitive from a warrant that I didn't even know I had. He did that before he investigated, before he went to my property, before you ever see him on my cameras investigating. Why? Just because he wanted to get me in jeopardy. That's why. And he was willing to take great risks. And it wasn't just him who wanted it. It was Sean pushing for it.
Well, it was Sean,
Kelly
it was
Ulmer.
Kelly, it was Fanning, it was all of them.
Fanning,
it was
right.
all of them.
So David's feeling the pressure, and he goes ahead and Lauren Davis Smith, the person allegedly having a years-long affair with Murphree, plays a role. They're all breaking the law while accusing me of being a lawbreaker. But what's interesting is Lauren Davis Smith set an outrageous bail conditions against me. It was so outrageous that brought forth an emergency bail reduction hearing in a matter of hours. Literally, it was 48 hours or so after Lauren Davis Smith did what she did. They were never expecting that to happen. Well, it did happen, and my bail was reduced, and the ridiculous constraints were taken off of me. Lauren Davis disappeared pretty quickly after that. Not too long after that, Lauren Davis went from being a magistrate to being an ice cream salesperson in Sandy Run, Ren Smith. So David Martin, the one suing them and suing Ulmer, he's got the right idea. Unfortunately, as I said, Icarus is also himself criminally responsible in my case, and he's flying a little bit close to the sun. Whether or not he'll get burned on it or not, I don't know. I know that he should be, though, because I don't believe any excuse. If he did so, he did it willingly. And if he did it willingly because he felt pushed or forced, he's supposed to have a strong enough character not to find himself in that position. So finally, the last thing I want to say here is Mike Fanning. He presided over all of it. There's a reason they settled with my wife and me for $300,000 after what they did to us. And getting back to the point at hand, David Pascoe's office presides over Phil Geis, and Phil Geis, just to be clear here, when the evidence was not brought in the initial criminal case against me and the bail had been reduced and the evidence that they supposedly have never materialized, no evidence ever given. So what do? They dismissed the case, but they didn't dismiss it with prejudice. They dismissed it with the ability to reinstate it should there be reason. Well, as soon as they dismissed it, I got in touch with, it was arduous, but I finally got in touch with the alleged victim. See, he wouldn't answer me, and I was leaving him messages daily saying, "Hey, Terry, I'd really like to give you this stuff back that you said I sold." And he never answered. It took my civil attorney subpoenaing him for deposition in order for him to go get an attorney, which he did, and have that attorney respond. Finally, I was able, weeks later, with the case still dismissed, to give him those things back. So everything he alleged, that it was alleged that I stole from him and sold, these were things he gave me in a consignment agreement that had not sold. I took over to his place with your husband dropped off, and he got everything. Done deal. After that, the case against me is reinstated. How does Phil Geis get a case reinstated against me without going to a grand jury? Well, no, you can't do it without going to a grand jury. Okay. So if you had to go to a grand jury and you didn't have any evidence before, and I had already returned everything that I was alleged to have sold and stolen, how do you have a case? How did you have anything to give to a grand jury? The answer is you did not have anything to give to a grand jury. Therefore, a grand jury never assembled to reinstate a case against me. This is very, very fucking important. Because in this incestuous soup of bullshit that's going on here, the reality is that you got a guy who's culpable for what happened to me, actively proactive about the criminality in it, in my opinion. That's my allegation. David Martin. David Martin was named in my lawsuit. When that case was settled, it was settled on behalf of everyone named. That includes David Martin. David Martin then went and sued the very same people I sued. And tucked in the back of his lawsuit is a little commentary about how they being the town, prosecuting smear campaigns and campaigns devised to hurt members of the community with whom they did not agree or whom they didn't like. who they didn't like. So that would be me. Well, it's fine for David Martin to be involved in that civil suit. It's fine for him to bring the civil suit, but let's be honest. He played, in my opinion, a criminal role in what happened to me, as did the others he's suing. It's great for David Pascoe to be calling for criminal referral in this case based on what he's read in David Martin's civil suit. That's great. But it's also strange because he presides over the same office that facilitated not once, but twice a malicious prosecution in my case. So it means that the relationship somewhere in the chain, and I'm alleging that it's Phil, and it may well be David. I don't know. It's an allegation. One of them is close enough to someone on that other side, whether it be David Martin or Sean Murphree or both, to get a phone call and to trust that what they're being told is true, only to find themselves getting burned when they get a call from my attorney saying, hey, what are you guys doing reinstating a case? This guy, here's the video of him returning everything that you guys said he sold and stole. So in the words of Desi Arnaz, you got some explaining to do, motherfuckers. So yeah, I think it's great that David Pascoe did this thing in an election where he's running for AG. And one of the things he's running on is fighting corruption in a very corrupt state, South Carolina. And it's one of the pillars of his campaign. Good for you. It's your job and it needs to be done, particularly in this state. But you still have some explaining to do. How the fuck did this happen? And how many other people has it happened to? Because you know what? Where I'm concerned, it's water under the bridge. I've received my restitution and accepted it. But I think the members of the community as a whole are owed an explanation. How is it that you managed to do this magic trick where a grand jury gets nothing and looks it over and gives you an answer? We got a lawbreaker with a civil suit against the other alleged lawbreakers. And then we got an alleged lawbreaker or two calling for a criminal investigation against these other alleged lawbreakers. So it's a big, like I said, it's a freaking, if it were porn, it would be an orgy. It's disgusting.
It is. Just like Mike Fanning is the captain of the town of Elloree. And we do have some serious criminal allegations against multiple elected officials as well as appointed and employees of the town of Elloree. And, you know, we've asked for this for years. You and I, other members of the community, have asked for SLED to get involved for years. And here we are. You've been damaged. My husband and I, our business has been damaged. I mean, we had grand goals and ideas to open a frame shop and an art gallery on Cleveland Street. And we had Michael Mann pull over one of our clients and say to that client, where are you headed? And she said, to the gallery. And this is a police officer in our town that said to her, I'm so sorry you have to deal with those people. So the harassment is real. And there are 3 or 4 families in the town of Elloree who have been harassed incessantly by these people.
And it goes well beyond the harassment. It goes to the fact that, I mean, look, it's not a big community and it's not a big town hall, but to put it into perspective, Mike Fanning is being accused of willfully trying to derail or prevent an investigation by the state police. Specifically, the allegation is that he tried to convince Chief David Martin not to investigate certain aspects and not to call in SLED to investigate certain concerns that David had. This includes Jessica Darnell, who is alleged to have tried to set the evidence room on fire.
Right.
So the allegations run from abusing the system to enrich oneself, illegal kickbacks, theft of evidence, failure to log in evidence. Why is it so important to log evidence in? Well, because for one thing, it helps other crimes get solved when it's logged, because it goes into a national system. But beyond that, it helps to mitigate when an officer might be compelled to fraudulently dip their hand into that evidence room
Right.
and steal some of that stuff in order to enrich themselves. So it's very, very, very serious. What we would have liked to have seen is Mike Fanning catching word of this from his police chief and saying, well, absolutely, Dave, if you think that this has happened, this was something that should be investigated, and let's bring SLED in. That is
That's
not
the
only
right way
what,
to do it.
but well, that's what he's supposed to do. That's
Right.
what his oath calls upon him to do.
Right.
But instead, you have to ask yourself, why would you take the risk of appearing to be covering up in a conspiracy, illegal behavior? Why would you put yourself and your legacy at risk if you yourself don't have something to cover up? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
It's hard to explain it away. I think it's something difficult for Mike Fanning to explain away. If David Martin's allegations are true and Mike Fanning willfully tried to derail a SLED investigation into members of his town hall and employees of the police department, then it begs the question, why? What are you covering up? What are you trying to prevent?
Right.
And Mike is just the tip of the spear. So that's the big guy who, if you ask him, will tell you he's a strong mayor. And so the buck stops with him. But, let's talk about others. Mike Mann, who is no longer an officer in Elloree. David Pascoe is calling upon him to be investigated. And I would imagine it's going to be in his alleged proximity to the evidence closet, his access to it or perceived access to it. It won't be the first time SLED was looking into Mike Mann because
Right.
as you had mentioned before, there was the polygraph that Mike refused to take.
Correct.
And it seems that those questions were involving.
They are.
So in Jessica's case, we know Jessica was a clerk at the police department and
She
the
was
court,
the
right?
clerk of court, actually.
Uh-huh.
She was the clerk of court. So
And
Charlene Rainey is our town clerk. Frida Trupiano and Charlene were our clerks. Charlene was part-time. Frida has retired, and Charlene, I believe, has gone full-time now. But Jessica was the clerk of court. So she was not the town clerk. She was the clerk of court. So she took the payment. She headed up the docket, made sure that all of the cases that were going before our magistrate, suspects were notified. And she's the one that did all of that.
I got it. And I'm interested to understand where this criminal investigation is alleged to be leading, where Jessica Darnell is concerned. It's really into the fact that not only is she being alleged to have stolen money, apparently, but also stolen possibly evidence, right?
Correct. So if we remember back to David Martin's civil suit, he specifically mentions the cash payments that were not logged. He also mentions the attempted arson of the evidence room, but he also states in that civil suit that Jessica destroyed 10 years of documents. Police documents.
I'm imagining that the reason one would destroy those documents is because those documents make reference to evidence that is no longer there present in Elloree's evidence room or evidence closet, meaning that it was taken, sold, used, whatever, and by getting rid of the documents that refer to those items, you're essentially covering up that they ever existed there. Does that sound about right?
It's not just the evidence in the evidence room. It's also the documentation when one of the officers, namely Mike and Sean, would pull someone over and then they would tow that vehicle. They would call Kelly to come and tow that vehicle, and whatever cash payment, because you have to understand Kelly Ulmer and Donnie Smith owns the towing company and the body shop. they are the ones that are benefiting. They're both council members. Kelly, of course, is mayor-elect. They're benefiting from those cash payments, and they don't take credit cards. They don't take checks. It's cash only. And, so if Mike or Sean pull over a vehicle, they tow the vehicle, there's no record of the tow because a receipt wasn't given, payment was taken in cash. They have to log the traffic stop. So that's documentation that she would have been destroying. Because if you have a record of a traffic stop and then the vehicle is towed and then the cash money is taken for the fine, for the tow, for the whatever, keeping that evidence around is going to point a finger to Donnie and Kelly.
And I just wonder what David Martin's evidence to back up that allegation might be. And I'm eager to of course, learn that whenever, if ever, that is possible.
Right.
Because that is a hefty allegation, and it's such a terrible, terrible thing for anyone to have done if someone actually did that.
Right.
Because it threatens the people live on that street.
Mm-hmm.
There are not only businesses there, but there's apartments there. As a matter of fact, Jessica Darnell, if I'm not mistaken, and Mike Mann at one point, either one or both of them lived in one of those apartments. There. Right. That is literally a building or two away from the very room that allegedly she was trying to set on fire. That said, let's go now. Let's shift gears over to Kelly Ulmer. Kelly Ulmer, also David Pascoe is calling for an investigation into Kelly Ulmer.
So Kelly,
and the accusation there is that he's getting kickbacks. Is it his uncle?
His cousin.
His cousin. Is the allegation is that his cousin is getting paid or was getting paid for work that he hadn't done on cars. Is that right?
Correct.
On squad cars. Okay.
Also larceny of the police radio.
And that's Kelly Ulmer specifically, who stole allegedly a police radio that is allegedly worth thousands of dollars. Piece of equipment that is tied into the other police radios so that he would be able to listen in on private police conversation, making him privy to all sorts of information that he's not supposed to.
Now, Kelly has gone around, or actually Mike Fanning has said that Kelly found the radio on a bench, but the allegations are that he physically removed it from a police car from one of our cruisers that was no longer in service. And that particular cruiser was actually parked in his building. It's the old fire station there past Railroad as you're going out of town on Cleveland Street. But let's talk about Kelly for just a minute. Now we've got to understand that there's a code of ethics. There are ethics laws that are put into place to protect the town and the citizens from these types of behaviors. And it's actually it's in the code of laws. It's South Carolina Code Statute 8-700. And it states it prohibits public officials and employees from knowingly using their official position for financial gain and requires them to disclose and recuse themselves from matters where they have a conflict of interest. This means that they cannot use their office to benefit themselves, their immediate family, or associated individuals or businesses. For conflicts of interest, they must provide a written statement to the presiding officer of their governing body, who will then ensure the member is excused from voting and the recusal is noted in the minutes. Now, there are key provisions of this statute, 8-700, prohibits using official position for financial gain. You cannot use your public office to obtain an economic interest for yourself, a family member, or an associated business. Now, let me pause here because in If you remember back to the criminal referral, on point 6, the last sentence says, Ulmer is alleged to have had made admissions that he evaluated the effectiveness of the police department in his role as councilman based upon the revenue that he, in bold print and underline, made from law enforcement related tows.
He's a town official, and yet he's still making money off of the town.
So, conflict of interest and disclosure, recusal from conflicted matters, and it does include public employee as well. Now, let's keep in mind again that Donnie Smith, who is a councilman, and Kelly Ulmer, who is currently a councilman and mayor-elect, both have a stake and a hand in this business that has been paid for, allegedly, been paid for repairing police cars, but the work has never been done. And then also they are called on these Elloree tows. Knowingly using your official position to direct payment for unauthorized items can be a violation of the statute, as seen in cases involving reimbursement for personal or employee meals or gifts. The consequences for violating the law can include penalties as determined by the South Carolina Ethics Commission, which has jurisdiction over these matters. So these are ethical violations, and the Ethics Commission formal complaint has been filed with the Ethics Commission, and we are currently awaiting information on that.
And so that brings us then to Sean. Sean, as we said, this guy just he's got more fingers pointing at him.
He is out of control, Tim. He's out of control.
Well, I mean, let's just go through the resume, shall we? This is the resume. Sean Murphree harassed J.D. Bonds to the point where he lost his job. Sean got his job taken away from him, was fired, or they dressed it up as if he retired. That's what, when I was in the mediation and Mike Fanning was there, Mike tried to sell me that, oh no, Sean just retired.
But the way the town covered that up, Tim, is they put him on unpaid leave until he was able to retire. That's how the town covered it up.
Right. That's exactly what they did. So that's even more evidence of a conspiracy right there. Because it's conspiratorial, period.
Right.
What should have happened in that, well, anyway, without getting caught in the weeds there, as I always do. The idea is that Murphree not only has been fired for willful destruction of property, entered into the national NCICS system with a year-long order of protection granted against him for harassing and bullying a member of the public, did the same thing to me, got sued for it as part of the settlement that happened in my case, is now being sued by his former friend and his former subordinate who took his job when he got fired. That's alleging that he's part of a conspiracy, not only a part of a conspiracy to steal from the town, to steal money from the town, to get illegal kickbacks from the town, to participate in illegal schemes where he's making money, to hide the theft of evidence, to mismanage the evidence to a point of unlawfulness. These are all the allegations. To participate in conspiracies against members of the community.
And we have town funds for unauthorized personal purchases.
And resisting the requirement of his job to police the areas of the community for whom he allegedly had disdain, which is out and out racism.
Did you know archaic's not just archaic, but it's also archive now, or however you want to say that word. It's supposed to be French, don't ask me why, but the point is we sell vintage mechanical Swiss watches from the 20th century. Wear something authentic, wear something unique, wear something from archive.
So when you step back and you look at all of this together, it's not just one bad decision or one bad cop having a bad day. It's a pattern. It's a culture. It's people in positions of power deciding that certain parts of town, certain people just don't matter. And when you decide that whole neighborhoods don't deserve protection, when you decide that evidence doesn't have to be logged, when you decide that the rules are optional for you and for your friends, that's not just bad government. That's rot. And here's where we are now. We've got civil suits. We've got ethics complaints. You got the solicitor calling for criminal investigations. You've got allegations of racism, of theft, of arson attempts, of kickbacks, of cover-ups. And somehow, for years, all of this managed to live right under the nose of the people who were supposed to be in charge. Now that's the story. That's a real story. That's the town that we're talking about. Our town, Elloree, the town I love. Not some abstract place. That's this town. Real people, real lives, real damage. Now, I said this at the top of the episode. I'm going to say it again. This is the tipping point. Because once a letter like Pascoe's lands on SLED's desk, once affidavits are signed, once complaints are on the record, once lawsuits are filed and answered, you can't just shove this stuff back in a drawer and pretend that it never happened. You can try to spin it. You can try to minimize it. You can try to hide behind, oh, that's just politics, or oh, that's just personal vendettas. But that only works if people aren't paying attention. So I am asking you to pay attention. If you're listening to this right now, I'm asking you to get involved by paying attention. And not just to me, not to Krista, not just to us and to the podcast, not to the gossip at all, but to the paper trail, to the documents, to the orders of protection, to the settlements, to the ethics filings, to the criminal referrals, to the fact that the same names keep coming up over and over and over again on the wrong side of the story. And that's not an accident. That's not a coincidence. That's a system that has been allowed to operate without real oversight for far, far too long. And look, I'm not sitting here pretending to be a saint, but I am in the middle of all of this. And I've said it before. Not only am I in the middle of it, my family is in the middle of it. We got dragged through it. My business got dragged through it. Yes, we sued, and yes, they settled. And we moved on with our lives the best that we could. But what has happened to us is not the whole story here. It is one chapter in a much bigger book about how the power in Elloree, when unchecked, was and remains abusive. What this referral does, if SLED takes it seriously, if the Ethics Commission takes it seriously, if the courts take it seriously, is it forces some sunlight into rooms that have stayed dark for a very long time. Now, it's not going to fix everything. It doesn't magically make honest people out of dishonest ones, but it does send a signal that the days of doing this in the shadows, of laughing it off, of brushing people off as troublemakers because they ask hard questions or they stand up for themselves when you're trying to bully them, those days are over. At least as far as I'm concerned, they are. And for you, they should be too. So there's a responsibility, not just on your side, but on our side of the microphone for Krista and for me too. The reason that Left, Right, and Local exists, the reason Krista and I do this is because there has to be somewhere that you guys can hear this stuff laid out plainly, no press releases, no canned statements, no back slapping at the ribbon cutting ceremony. Just come here are the facts. This is how we know them. Here's who's named. Here's what's alleged. Here's what's on paper. Here's what it could mean for your town and for your neighbors and for your kids. So, where I want to leave you tonight is with this. Over the coming weeks and months, this story is either going to be investigated in a real way or it's going to be slow walked and buried and smothered under bureaucracy. That fork in the road doesn't belong to one man in an office in Columbia or wherever. It belongs to all of us who are watching. Paying attention matters. Asking questions matters. Showing up and reading the documents, talking to your neighbors, talking to your politicians, talking to your officials, refusing to look away. That matters. Go to your town hall meetings. If you care about this town, or whatever small town you happen to be listening from, this is the moment where you decide whether you're going to be numb to it or whether you're going to insist that people who wear the titles and who cash the checks are actually living up to the oaths that they have taken. Not the slogans, not the campaign signs, to their oaths. The oaths that say that they will uphold the law and protect the people, not exploit the law and punish the people who get in their way when they want to do bad shit. So we're going to keep following this. We're going to dig into what SLED does or doesn't do. We're going to watch and track what happens with these lawsuits, with the Ethics Commission, with all the players whose names you have heard tonight. And we're going to keep putting all of that in front of you in plain language so that you can make up your own mind with your eyes wide open. I want to thank all of you for listening and for watching. And for now, that's just where we're going to leave it. This has been episode 8 of Left, Right, and Local, The Tipping Point. I am your co-host, Timothy Gibbs, with the lovely Krista Hassel, and I want to thank her for her participation. It's just a real pleasure and honor to sit down with her. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and for the love of small towns everywhere, keep paying attention. We'll see you next time.